If you're an adult dancer and your arabesque feels like it's stuck, stiff, too low, or like your back is doing all of the work, I want to take the pressure off. You're not too old, you're not too tight, and your body isn't fighting you. It's protecting you. What you need isn't to actually crank your leg higher. You need to understand how arabesque actually works, historically, anatomically, and emotionally. And once you understand that, your arabesque becomes less of a mystery and something you can train, grow, and own no matter your age. Today we're going to dive deep into arabesque. We're going to find out where arabesque comes from, what your body must do to achieve it safely and protect your back, why adults like you struggle differently than children and teenagers, and the exact exercises you can use to unlock range that you can control, not just force. So let's dive in so that you can practice for many years. Now let's start with a bit of history, because arabesque originally belonged to the world of Islamic art and architecture, long before it described a dancer lifting their leg behind them. In Middle Eastern decorative design, arabesque referred to flowing, interlacing patterns, vines, scrolls, spirals, repeating lines that seemed endless. They were precise, symmetrical, hypnotic, and above all, they were about line. In Western Europe in the 17th to 19th centuries, everyone became fascinated with these designs. Artists, architects, composers, people were captivated by the elegance and geometry of these motifs. The style was exotic, mysterious, refined, and rhythmic. So when ballet masters began codifying positions and shapes in the Romantic era, they borrowed the word arabesque, not because of geography, but because of the shape the dancer mirrored in these ornamental lines. A long, continuous curve, a shape that draws the eye, a line that seems to extend beyond the body. That is the essence of arabesque, and choreographers loved it. They used arabesque as a visual punctuation mark, a moment where the dancer became a living piece of ornamentation, a line carved in space, just like the architectural scroll work that inspired the name. Back in Romantic ballets like Giselle and La Sylphide, the arabesque wasn't about height, it was about illusion, a lifted chest, a gentle reach, a suspended breath, just like the way that the tutu lifts and falls through the second arabesque as Giselle leaves the stage. It becomes a human body echoing the endless line of carved frieze or the curve of a tiled mosaic. But even today, as our arabesques are higher and technique has become stronger, the heart of the arabesque hasn't changed. It's a precise, intentional, and elegant line, tracing space the same way those ancient patterns traced stone, metal, and tile. So when you move into an arabesque, you're not just hitting a line. You're stepping into a lineage of art, design, architecture, and aesthetic philosophy that is hundreds, if not thousands of years old. You are literally becoming a living ornament, the moving version of a line that refuses to end. Now, all of that being said, I think we need to talk about the anatomy of the arabesque, because this is where most adult dancers get tripped up. And when your body might be quietly sabotaging you, your line is falling apart without you even realizing it. Many dancers are told to just lift your leg and hold your core, but your ability to get into a high supported arabesque is profoundly affected by something hardly anyone else talks about: the relationship between your pelvis, the femur, your waist length, and your floating ribs. So let's break this down as simply as I can. Some dancers naturally have a shorter distance between the top of their iliac crest and their floating ribs, the 11th and 12th ribs. This essentially leads to having less distance and less real estate to work on that extension in your lumbar spine. So as you go lifting your leg, you have less distance here to pull up without feeling that compression start to kick in. When it comes to hip extension, we have three main movers: the glute, the hamstring, and the low back. So as our leg goes up into our arabesque, we have to ensure that we're using the right muscle first to get that hip extension. Generally speaking, as humans, we all try to use our low back first, then our hamstrings, and then our glutes, and it should be the complete opposite. As you do your tendu, if you start to lean forward, you can guarantee that you're not going to be using the right muscles first. So from this position in your tendu, the goal is to start lifting the leg using your glute. This is where it becomes really important to understand spiral in your body. If you're being told to keep both hip bones perfectly square to the front as you lift your leg, you're not going to be able to go very far. Hamstring is going to take over, bend your knee, and you're going to feel quite stuck in that lift. Instead, you want to think about rotating from the ribs and the shoulders, keep going square towards that direction, rotating the leg in the opposite direction allowing the hip to open ever so slightly so that the glute medius can start lifting your leg. In this way, the movement is happening more in the hip than it is in the low back, and we're not getting as much anterior tilt in the pelvis to try and lift that leg into our arabesque. Now here's the emotional kicker. Many adults with a shorter waist think that there's something wrong with them. Nothing is wrong, you just simply have less mechanical space to work with. So we have to rely on using the right muscle groups to get the job done. And it turns out that ballet has a built-in mechanism to train this. When you're starting your class, oftentimes at the end of a plie combination, we'll do something called a cambre derrière. If your cambre is being trained from the lumbar spine, the lower back, and you're just bending that way, you're not training yourself to create more thoracic mobility, which will allow your leg to lift higher. Here's the difference in how this looks. If you go to lift your leg and you only bend in the lumbar, you're going to get quite stuck. If you allow your thoracic spine to shift slightly forward, not lean forward, this creates more space for your leg to lift. Try this for me. Do a cambre and tendu, and then as you come up, keep that and maintain the line. You'll find that you're able to get a higher arabesque by starting from that thoracic mobility and then lifting the leg, keeping the same relationship you developed in the cambre derrière. As we talked about before, this is also going to be related to your glute strength, your hip rotation, how much you can control your ribs, and your pelvic stability. Sure, there may not be as much space to work with, but if you're able to develop thoracic extension, you're going to be able to find a much greater range of motion in your arabesque as long as your glutes are strong, you're working on rotation, and you're developing that connection between the lifting of the leg through the glute and the extension of the upper body in the thoracic spine. Teenagers with longer waists can fake their arabesque height by hinging in their low back. Adults with shorter waists, you're going to feel it instantly as pinching, gripping, fatigue, and instability in your low back as you try to lift your leg. Here's the good news. Short-waisted dancers often end up with cleaner, more stable technique because they have to do it correctly. So let's talk about your floating ribs. Your floating ribs are the two ribs at the base of your rib cage, and they do not attach to the sternum. In fact, they're designed to move, expand, rotate, and assist in spinal extension. If you tilt forward immediately, you're not going to be able to find the connection you need to lift the leg properly. And the floating ribs are not going to be able to move the way they need to allow your core to stabilize your spine, your hip to extend, and your arabesque to flow freely. So to recap, to develop your arabesque height, regardless of the distance that you have between your ribs and your pelvis or the mobility that you have in your low back, we have to work first on thoracic extension and glute medius strength, and then counter rotation through the back as we lift the leg. When you start to lift, especially above 45 degrees, the ribs are going to shift forward to allow for the leg to lift. You're going to try to open up your abdominals because contracting them is going to reduce hip extension. And then you're going to engage your glutes and your low back to stabilize as the leg lifts higher, creating almost like a book bending back on itself, lifting up at 2 points in opposite directions, extending the line and bringing it together in this grand, strong V alignment. And this is where your artistry comes alive. So let's talk about some simple exercises that you can do to help mobilize your arabesque and prepare your body for the technique you're going to need in your dance classes. The first exercise is going to be a thoracic opener. So what you're going to do is come down onto the floor. You're going to place your hands directly beneath your shoulders, lying flat on the ground, and you're going to push up, trying to keep your ribs flat against the ground as you pressure through your palms into the floor and then come back down. So lifting up, creating pressure through the palms, keeping the ribs in the floor, working on the thoracic extension, and then coming back down. Do this exercise 5 times, very slowly, creating that pressure and extension, and then coming back down. Have a little rest. Do it 3 times. So you're going to do 3 sets of 5 reps, and then move on to the next exercise. Starting with thoracic mobility is going to then work our way down the chain to be able to give you the range of motion you need for your arabesque from the top of the body, working our way down. Next, we need to develop our hip extension, and we should do this in a lunge. So coming down to the floor, you're going to put a mat underneath your thigh. Your hands are going to go onto your knee, and you're going to lunge as far forward as you can, keeping your leg parallel so we can work through the greatest dimension of the hip as we're doing our extension. You're then going to stretch your back leg as much as you possibly can while keeping your thigh on top of the mat. Not lifting up this way and definitely not leaning forward with the upper body. Keeping your body upright, stretching the back leg, holding for 3 seconds, 2, 3, and then coming back down. You're going to do that 5 times. Extend, 2, 3, and come back down. You can see my body is staying upright, not leaning forward, so that we're getting the most out of our hip extension while engaging that alignment and stabilizing through our front leg so that you're developing strength in your standing leg. Do 3 sets of 10 on each leg to really get the hip flexor nice and open before you start your class. The next exercise you're going to do is place your leg in an arabesque on the bar. You're going to bend forward into a plie, and from there, as you extend, you're going to stretch up, reaching as far away from your arabesque as possible before going and diving down again. Reaching as far away as possible and then diving down again. We do this 10 times, and then we lift the leg off the bar and back down. Lift and back down. Lift and back down 10 times. Combining these 2 exercises together is going to strengthen the muscles that keep your back upright while developing flexibility through the upper back in all of the possible ranges that your leg is still extended in the arabesque. Do 1 set of 10 bends forward and 1 set of 10 lifts on each side before starting your class. And the last exercise is all about movement pattern. So you're going to do a tendu to the back, making sure that you lead with your toes, working out to your tendu, making sure your hips are not too square and your heel is not pointed up to the ceiling. Keeping your ribs rotated towards the front, you're going to lift to 45 degrees, not letting your pelvis shift. From there, you're going to move your ribs forward, lifting another 5 to 10 degrees, come back down to tendu and close. And repeat the same exercise again. Rotating, lifting, shifting, return, and close. This is a practice you can do by getting a camera and filming yourself to ensure that your pelvis isn't tilting too soon and you're not just leaning forward, you're shifting at the thoracic spine. Adding in each of those exercises, either as a warm-up or even as a strengthening session outside of your classes, is going to help to develop the right movement patterns, the right muscular conditioning, and the right nervous system understanding for your body to allow you to freely get into arabesque. It does take practice, it will take time, but if you get in and you do those exercises in addition to your classwork, you'll find your arabesque starts to open up quite a bit. What I really want to leave you guys with is an understanding that your waist length does not determine your artistry. Your rib cage is not working against you, and your pelvis is not the enemy. Your body just wants a conversation, one that can be facilitated by extra work to develop the movement patterns, as well as a technical understanding of what you're doing in class. Once the ribs, pelvis, and spine learn to communicate, your arabesque stops feeling like a fight and starts feeling like freedom. That freedom, that's the moment every dancer, child, adult, professional, or amateur, dreams of. Thanks for joining me today, guys. I want you to let me know in the comments if there's anything that you're still struggling with in your arabesque, and whether I should go deeper into this and maybe even create a full follow-along workout guide for improving your arabesque. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe, share with your friends, and remember, your best dancing isn't behind you, it's ahead of you. Practice for many years.